Look, there's no doubt the financial model of many universities is seriously challenged at the moment, and it is the case that universities have depended on international students to cross-subsidise and offset. It might be domestic declines or just the fees for domestic students not being enough. And in our case at Western Sydney University, we've got the additional need that international students have supported Aussie kids in need. Our food programs, for example, the digital support we might provide, the extra learning for students who are first in family or from a non-English speaking background. So the international students heavily support, in our case, equity for Australian students. And the fact that we can't take those internationals in the numbers we need, which by the way is a dreadful outcome for Western Sydney that needs them as nurses. Without them, there's going to be a critical shortage of nurses, even worse than it is today in a couple of years. But we do need to look at a few things. One is reducing cost, that's inevitable. I think often universities, ours included, can ask questions about what are we doing, what's most important, how do we focus our scarce resources on the core mission, students, research, serving community. And I think that focus can help because often there's enough resources if you do that. And when it comes to growth, absolutely business partnerships. At Western Sydney, we've got an airport coming in, massive companies like Amazon building quarters. I love the idea of earn as you learn and other industry partnerships that support what we do. And we need to be innovative and entrepreneurial when it comes to that. And that's where we are, but I actually think it's not just the funding driver, it's actually the benefits driver, because sure, industry partnerships bring in money to universities, but even more importantly, they bring in employability for students and skills and the like. And that is the biggest benefit of all, not just the financial sustainability. I think we are in a world where the core mission of universities is greatly challenged. Just that mission of creating knowledge and communicating the facts based upon expertise doesn't fit well with a lot of social media and misinformation, which is also why as universities we have to be on social media. Otherwise we're abandoning the key place people get information from, often to what is a swamp of misinformation. So there are challenges in those areas, but I'm convinced that our mission is right. It's a mission that goes back not just decades, but of course centuries around the world. And we're a vital building block of a good society based upon lifting people up to great lifelong opportunities and generating knowledge that underpins social progress and prosperity. And for that, freedom of speech, academic freedom are vital. And it's important we don't get to the point where governments are micromanaging that to the extent that capacity for exploration is simply diminished or even disappears. I'm really worried when it comes to where we are in research, which of course is really about solving problems, coming up with solutions that help the community. It could be life-saving cures, it could be improving productivity, it could be sustainability initiatives, and this university work is just absolutely vital to our nation's economic, social, environmental future. And we don't have a plan as a nation. We're drifting at the moment. The Accord had some nice, high-sounding, fairly vague statements. There's no roadmap there for where we need to head. And if there is a roadmap, well, gee, it's so expensive, nobody thinks actually the government's likely to fund it. We've got an R&D report, which will take a year or so, but at best we've got a commitment to a process. And I think certainly we do need from our political leaders a clear sense of the value of research, the leadership by universities, and a willingness to invest, which after all is investing in community benefit. That's actually what research delivers. The cost of regulation is already prohibitive for many universities, and sadly much of that regulation doesn't make sense. It actually drives compliance behaviour, but not actually behaviour that is in the national interest. A good example is the foreign arrangements scheme that we had introduced a few years ago, where we have to register these arrangements. Nothing much seems to happen. You don't actually get them vetoed, and so a lot of staff focused on compliance, but is it actually driving more productive behaviours? Not much evidence that it is. And that's again a reflection of the lack of trust of universities and a desire of government to intervene. What we need is regulation that's focused on unis delivering on their mission, that rightly gives room for autonomy, independence, but we're not there at the moment. And my fear, in fact, is that momentum is building for more regulation and a more stifling of the sector as opposed to letting us thrive. I think if universities are concerned about the regulation, we've got to win back public trust. You get regulated when the public doesn't trust you, is concerned about whether you're true to mission. Politicians naturally respond to that, and we have to repair those relationships. We have to, as a sector, demonstrate through our actions. We've got to listen with humility to show we actually understand where the community's coming from, We've got to take action that actually reflects those issues as opposed to hoping they go away. And then most importantly, we've got to be a sector that actually, in line with community expectations, delivers for students, starting of course with Australian students, given we're Australian universities, and then delivers on our research and our other mission. And I think by being true to that and communicating it, that's the secret to actually ending up with a sector that isn't in the news for the wrong reasons, but is because of the wonderful work we do in actually giving people a better life.